Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can hear us okay. We're just giving it a few seconds to let everybody join in. See if there's any names we recognize as well.
Yep. So hopefully we are recording everyone this time, and then hopefully to the cloud, and it will work. So Giles and I have learned truckloads, not so much about financial modeling, but about Zoom and event management, and it's been a bit of a challenge, Giles, I must admit.
It's just reinforced my belief that the moment I step out of spreadsheets, I'm an absolute failure in life. But there you go.
If everything was easy as a three-way model, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Just keep me in Excel. I'm fine. So I think the numbers are getting up quite nicely. Lance, can you see my screen?
No, you stopped sharing, so it's
okay. So I will start sharing, and we can make a slow start with some introductions again. Okay, welcome everybody. So I'll go through the introductions again. I suspect some of you have seen our faces and heard us before now if you were involved in the summit or our first follow-up session. So just a bit of background, the reason why we're doing this, we sent out invites for the first follow-up session after the summit, and a calendar invite didn't get sent with that. So apologies that there were a few questions that came through to the Generation CFO team asking where the follow-up was, and it had already happened. So this is us rehashing what we did before. We've changed the content around, so if you were on the previous free session, this should still be of some value to you. But again, it's Lance and I deep diving a bit into some different modeling elements. So my name is Giles Mail. I'm part owner of a UK-based consultancy company called Clarity Consultancy Services. We build models, we review models, we're qualified accountants, and we try and add a sort of commercial element to any projects we get involved in. Lance, do you want to do your introduction as well?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Claire, for for running it again. Our pleasure. We felt a bit embarrassed. So what we do well, or at least what I do well, is build models to help businesses and people make better decisions that are relevant, informed, and purposeful. And we use a range of tools and technologies, not just Excel. We've sort of heavily reliant on Excel, of course, but we do see other technologies very powerful around the Excel environment. And so we're actually going to show something tonight, as Giles said, that's sort of touches on what we've discussed before, but we're going to go into some specific ones, particularly dynamic arrays and PowerBI, and how that's going to change the face of modeling, albeit still in Excel.
Yeah, and I'm all ears for that as well. I haven't managed to get my head around dynamic arrays fully yet, so it'll be good training session for me. I'll also be just running through some extra bits on my modeling, more from the kind of ground up level of where you're building models from scratch. And you know, Lance has got this amazing kind of background now where a lot of what he does is based on automation. So hopefully there's a nice kind of mix between the two of us. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lance.
Yeah, no, let's just quickly run that poll, because I think, you know, one of the things that is always, so I'm just going to run a poll now. You should see it on your screen. You know, ultimately what we're trying to do is just get a gauge of the audience, because I guess financial modeling in today's terms is going to be so much, wow, that's quite a big spread. So we've got, thanks everyone for voting. We're up to 50%. We've got 40 votes. That's great. I'll end it once we get probably close to 80. So yeah, business owners, of course, financial professionals, lots of people that do financial modeling at the moment. Sorry, can someone just mute? Just everyone, you should be muted. Thanks, Barry. Eve.
What are the results, Lance? Sorry, I can't see the poll results.
No, you can't see it. So looks like people stopped voting. 76% coverage. That's probably enough. End polling, share results.
Okay, that's interesting.
Okay, so we've got lots of accountants and auditors. I'm an ex-auditor and an accountant, although I don't go by that name when I introduce myself. But certainly, we've got a very broad, diverse mix of external, internal business owners as well, which is interesting. Virtual CFOs and the like, but definitely by far accountants and auditors, which is probably the area which is most keen to learn these skills, because I guess as an auditor, certainly as I was an auditor, I did a bit of model audit, but until you actually build the models, I think it becomes a bit challenging otherwise. So, well, thanks everyone. That was very useful.
So I suppose following on from that, and what I'm going to say is very much now pitched at the modeling enthusiast. It doesn't mean you have to work in modeling, but as an accountant or whatever, somebody with an interest in developing their modeling skills. And this is a slight repeat of what I said in the last free session. The strange paradox as you gain more experience in modeling is that you end up with this enormous toolkit of things that you can do, whether that's functions and skill sets in Excel or with add-ins, and also a set of tools in terms of your mindset as well, I think it's fair to say. And as you go through project after project, year after year, it's like you're leaning back, and as you hear the requirements from your client, you're kind of picking things in your mind, what you might need technically. And but in mind, what we strive for when we're going to come on and talk about standards a little bit is actually simplicity. You will be able to do very complex things as you go through your modeling career. But actually the most important principle you can keep yourself to is to keep things simple. If you build something that the moment you hand it to somebody else, it's impossible for them to understand, then you haven't really done your job very well as a modeler, as the developer of that model. So that's why I've got this crazy bookshelf up on the screen. It's just think of this idea of leaning back and picking things that you're going to use for a particular project. And what we're going to come on to, Lance and I, in this session, are particular skills and particular elements that we build into our models. And what you'll see, especially with the stuff Lance goes into, is Excel keeps developing as well. So the power, the capabilities you have just within Excel are constantly improving over time. So I'll start. What I'm going to show you first are just a couple of elements of my models that are always there. So I touched on this before. This is a 3-statement model. I build things to the FAST standard. So what that means is that you'll have a certain structure and a certain set of consistent approaches. So I've got control sheets at the front. These are the tabs that give you background information or help ensure that the model remains kind of in working order. You've got inputs tabs all together, calculations tabs, and outputs tabs at the back with your 3 statements. I'm not going to try and deep dive into all of the model, but I'm just going to hone in on 2 tabs. First one is the internal checks tab, which we have in all of our models, and a few questions came up about this in the last session we did. So we tend to break our checks out into integrity checks and performance checks. And the idea is that no matter where you go in the model, you can see the flag for the master integrity check and the master performance check.
Do you want to break one of those checks? Do you want to break, just so to show people what happens when you break one of the checks? And
yeah, exactly. So there's levels to this. There's what I'm saying is a master check. If you look here, that master check for the integrity is looking across the whole range of individual integrity checks. And if any one of these now turns to a check, then it'll flag that across the whole model. So for example, here's a common check. We've got a P&L tab, an output tab that's using sum ifs formulas, and it's looking into some source data. And what this check does is it takes all of the figures from the source data and all of the figures from the summary P&L tab, and it just does a calculation to say, do they equal the same total?
If they should, don't, right?
Yeah, exactly, they should do. And if they don't, then a check flags up here. and that master integrity check flags up as well. And the thing is, I think you probably agree with this, Lance, if you took 5 modelers who work at different companies and you ask them to share their internal check sheet with you, they'd all look slightly different. Some people won't use OK and check, they'll use true, false, ones, zeros, whatever it is, but the principle's the same. I know now that if I open
and just so everyone know, there is the chat up there. If you can't see anything, please pop it. I think Joe said you can only see a very minimized screenshot. Joe, can you see? Because I can see Giles's sheet fine. Does he just zoom in a bit more?
What about everybody else? How is my screen looking for people on the chat? Okay.
Okay for me. Thanks, Stephen. Okay. So Joe, maybe. Right. I can see full screen. Okay, so Joe, maybe that's cool. Wow, that's a lot of, so excellent. Thanks everyone. So yeah, just expand your screen. I'm actually running with 2 screens because it's useful to have big screens and expand it. And I think you can change in Zoom your different views. So if you the full screen view. Giles, I just want to take you back a sec. So when you build those control checks, because I think it's really important, we had a lot of questions on that before. What determines how you create these checks, right? Because you're very experienced at error checks, but really the ability.
Those little leaf things that go into his little play mat thing, and
sorry, I just muted. Sorry, please, if you got questions, please just put it into the chat. We can't have multiple people talking. So I think when you determine your check, how do you create it? You mentioned there, so I guess what determines what is a check and what's not a check?
Yeah, I mean, when you're doing this from scratch, the one bit of advice I give is build your checks as you build the model. I mean, it's a little bit different for me now because I tend to start from templates of some sort. But the checks, it's really basic logical checks. And a good example would be something like a control account that's showing an opening balance, movements, and a closing balance. So my opening balance is coming from my balance sheet for the cash. The movements and the closing balance are calculations based on the cash flow. I've got a check in there that's simply saying, does the closing balance equal the opening balance in the next period? There's nothing clever about that, but it's a really basic logical check. And if that's ever not the case, you know that something's not quite right. And it might be that you've got a cash flow mapping that's missing or something like that. The balance sheet check is another one, the key accounting formula. Does the sum of all your shareholders, the equity equal the sum of the net assets, assets less liabilities?
Yeah, great.
So the controls don't tend to be particularly complex technically themselves, but it's all the basic things. Does the total of a set of costs in your inputs equal the total that's coming out in the outputs?
Yeah, great. Giles, I like to explain it. If there's the same number in 2 places anywhere in your workbook, you put a check to make sure those 2 numbers are the same. So anywhere, of course not if the one number equals the other number, then there's no point in checking it if it equals the other number anyway as the formula. But like Giles was saying, if you have monthly totals and then you have an annual income statement and a monthly income statement, well, checking that the total revenue in both is the same across all periods. So that sort of aggregation check almost. But anywhere in the model where you've got two numbers that should be the same, put a check in.
And then the other side of that, I won't get too bogged down in this, just conscious of time, is performance checks. So again, this is just a really basic starting point, but you might have somewhere in your model an overdraft limit, something like that. It can be a lot more complex. And this is a performance check. So that there's no issue with the integrity of the model, but actually if the minimum balance of your overdraft goes beyond the overdraft limit, then again, you get a flag that tells you there's a performance issue. And that just means that the user might have to look at the assumptions or make some other sort of decision outside of the model.
Yeah.
So that's the first tab. The other tab that I just want to quickly run through is the time tab. So again, this is crucial for most model builds. your standard sort of financial modeling where you're looking forward over a time period. This is kind of the building block of your model. So throughout the calculations here, you've got all of these time elements, these different descriptive elements by period, and that flows through all of the tabs. It's used when you go from monthly to annual with your sum ifs formulas. The underlying construction of that all goes into a time tab. And if you look here, I'll minimize that. It's broken out into sections. This is very fast compliance. Different phases for the models, flagging whether a period is an actuals or a forecast period is absolutely crucial when you're looking at dynamic models. Just a simple 1 or a 0. I won't go into flags any more than that for the moment. This again is the starting point for a lot of financial models. You know, if you spend and invest the right amount of time getting the structure right, you can then keep things really nice and consistent when you get into your calculations and your outputs. So it's just a light touch for 2 areas of models that will always be covered in our work, which is internal controls and the time tab. And I'll probably stop there, Lance, and just pass over to you.
Yeah, just before you do, Giles, I think, and look, happy to pass on because we can talk about it, but I think you raise an interesting point, and I always say, look, this is probably the most important part of your model. It's the foundation, it's the time series. And when I ask people the question of, you have a model, what do you build first? And I can't tell you how many people say, oh, we build the assumptions, or we build the outputs, or we build the dashboards, or we build the logic. And like I said, no, I said, you build the time series. I said, that's the first thing that you have to build. So I think if you building the logic and the time series at the same time, and not sort of doing it on a consistent basis, then you're going to get into trouble down the track when suddenly you're going to have to add different bases. And of course, you've got to write the formulas the same, consistent horizontally. They've all got to go back to that foundation. So when you build a house, you don't just build the house, you build the foundations first. Your foundations of your house is your time series. And if you don't have a solid foundation, guaranteed your house is going to fall over.
Yeah, absolutely right. So, you know, I would suggest to anyone interested in this, be really OCD about consistency and the way your model looks. The formatting of red and blue is something else in the FAST standard, which I won't go into now, but it's giving me an indication of what sort of information I've got on every row. Okay, shall I hand over to you, Lance?
Yeah, sure. So I guess just a quick yes, no on the chat. Who have you I guess started to use or play with dynamic arrays? No. Or maybe I should flip it. Who has? Who has started, as opposed to no, not yet. Who has defined dynamic array? Okay, Matt, I'll do that in a sec.
Yeah, I'm the same as Joe. I've dipped my toe.
Dipped my toe into the water. What is a dynamic array? Okay. Look, I use them in VBA. So dynamic arrays is, you know, there's obviously arrays within Excel anyway. And what Microsoft released recently was dynamic arrays within Excel, and they're using particular formula structures. So what you can see here, this is, you know, not using any sort of technology. This is no add-ins. This is just plain Excel. There's a new sort of formula writing. And what you'll notice is that when the top left-hand or the left-hand cell dictates the consistency of that entire range to the right. So you'll see that formula, if I go to the right, it doesn't change. In fact, it goes gray. So this is almost a new formula base or new way of writing formulas in Excel. And if you think about it, you know, one of the biggest challenges in building models and building not just models, but any calculations is the fact that, you know, there's inconsistency or there's hard coding. Well, here that you just can't. Literally, it forces you, and you'll see there's no R1C1 row column, you know, reference. You know, it's really quite different. You have a different set of formula structures, but you've got, you know, literally that same now when we model, we also model in blocks. So when you write formulas in block formats, then you copy write and copy down. You're effectively doing that in an automatic way through dynamic arrays. So dynamic arrays effectively replaces that risk of you having to copy write and copy down. It has an automatic spill process where basically if you write it, it spills it across. And that means that you can do some really, really powerful things. So again, this is a dynamic array model. What I've done as well, and this is just a P&L only because, you know, building three-way dynamic array models is quite complex. You can do it, but it's not pretty. This is really what we've done is we've actually created that and also pulled in Power BI. So if I just quickly see my Power BI, everyone can see the Power BI screen that I've just pulled in. So I'm just going to quickly show you how powerful this is, the dynamic arrays. At the moment, we have 500 simulations. So we're going to run Monte Carlo Simulation, which tends to take quite a long time in VBA. And so there's other tools and other technologies that people use to run simulations, which is basically number of many different scenarios at the same time. So if you think about, you have different scenarios, and in simulations, you're running that a lot. And there's, you know, a range of different tools out there, but dynamic arrays is super fast. So I'm going to show you just quickly how powerful it is.
Jeanette, any chance you can help me? I was thinking,
sorry, can someone go on mute who's talking?
What do you need? I said, do you need me to come in? Should I really need you to come in?
Actually, there must be a mutual.
Yeah, I did mute all, and then I muted you as well by mistake, Charles, and then I had to unmute you. But anyway, I can't find.
Just a few hours today and a few hours tomorrow, but that's not that, is it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hang on, that's annoying.
Sorry for her.
Guys, if you can see you're off mute.
Michelle McGovern, I've put her into the waiting room at the moment, I think. Okay. Alrighty, so what we're going to do now, before I go back into mute all and then unmute other speaker. Okay, let's go mute all. Okay, hopefully that's
good.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Helen. Now, so what I'm going to go back before I bring up Power BI, and this is where Power BI and Excel start coming together with dynamic arrays, because Power BI is very much a data visualization tool, and Excel is obviously largely a financial modeling tool. But now we're going to bring these two together through the use of some of these pretty cool things. So this is my drivers table. So basically, tables and arrays obviously are very much related. So an array is effectively just a bunch of tables, but this is now a dynamic array. So this is products A to G, and there's a new product. Let's call this, so if I just go to my monthly income statements, actually this is revenue, and let's just go monthly revenue. So here we have, in this formula, again, this is a dynamic array. It's blocked, same formula all the way through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new row. I'm going to add a new product. I'm also going to change the existing new product. So I'm going to go back to my table of contents. Again, notice the structure and separating assumptions and outputs. Drivers tab, I'm going to call this product H. But now I'm going to add a new product I. And it's literally just added that row. So let's make that 500. Let's make the base volume 10 and the base unit cost 350. Now I'm going to go back to my table of contents. I'm going to go to my monthly sales, and there's my product I straight away. It's already populated. And that's all flowing through. So I haven't used any VBA, no nothing, just purely using dynamic arrays. So the ability to expand arrays makes it dynamic, and therefore effectively you can create models and expand models really, really quickly. Now that's what I call horizontal expansion, but let's go expand vertically. So here's our time series, very similar to what Giles was mentioning. This is a 48-monthly model for 48 months. So that's 4 years. So we here have our 4 years. This is aggregating our monthlies. Now, why don't we go in and we go to our time series, and we're going to make this 60 months. So we add in an extra year. So I'm just going to add 60, enter. And literally in a couple of seconds, it's added that extra year. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's very, very powerful, right? So I've added a new product and that's pushed it all the way through. I've added a new time series and that's pushed it all the way through. And if you thought that was good, wait until you see Monte Carlo Simulation. So again, I think just to clarify, Giles, because I know we had a few people before not understanding Monte Carlo Simulation, and definitely we're going to cover that as part of track 2 in the workshop, where we're going to talk about that and how you set it up and how would you design it. But really it's multiple scenarios at the same time running in a calculation. So if I want to just drag quickly my Power BI here, this is 500 simulations. So 500 times that is running calculations across a range of assumptions. And this is the distribution. This is the normal distribution curve for the enterprise valuation and gross margin and NPAT percentages, right? And that's 500. So let's move our Power BI out for a moment. Let's go back to our scenario summary. So in our scenario summary, we have 500 here as our number of simulations. And if I go look at my Monte Carlo outputs, there's the 500. Again, this entire thing is an array. So this is a rand array. It's using randomization, and it's effectively generating the randomization between a range. Very similar like rand between, but again, same thing. First left-hand column is your formula, and then it spills right? So now if I go all the way to the right, Control R, I can see my 500 simulations. So Stephen, I'll come back on the Power BI in a sec. So 500 simulations, and then click to the left. The Power BI data is all coming from this Excel model, as you'll see in a moment. So we've run 500 simulations. Now, Giles, you know a little bit about VBA and calculations. Have you ever run a Monte Carlo using VBA or running scenarios?
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, and I've done it without dynamic arrays, using RAND formulas as well, and it's not fast.
So how long do you think, if I had to go from 500 to 5,000? How quickly?
Well, I've used software before. I've used at-risk software, and bear in mind that's an add-in, and it probably took like a minute or two at least to run through that with the software. In Excel, surely multiple minutes.
So in at risk, and I think there's Palisade as well. There's a couple of other add-ins and other technologies and tools.
Yeah.
You know, Mathematica as well has simulations. There's a whole range of other tools that sit outside Excel and those that link to Excel. So how many simulations did you do there for at risk? Was it 1,000 or 5,000?
No, it was more. So you do at least 10,000 usually, but
okay, so let's do 10,000, right? So 10,000 simulations, right? Here we go. 10, 1, 2, 3, and let's just do a quick count. 1, 2, 3. That's it. Done. 3 seconds. Control R. 10,000.
Crazy.
So this is seriously, assume 0.5 recalculation in a big model running VBA 5,000 can take over half an hour. Brutal. Okay, Matt, thanks for that. 5,000 can take over half an hour. I've just done 10,000 in 3 seconds. So this is the power of dynamic arrays. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to save this model because what I'm going to do is I'm then going to visualize that in Power BI. So let's bring back our Power BI screen just here.
And Lance, what does that do in terms of file size? You know, how many megabytes would that?
Of course, it increases the file size. It does. No, it doesn't. Sorry, I'm jumping between the chat. So yes, it does increase the file size. So if we just go look at the file size, you know, it's not huge. It's 1.1 meg. Let's go out. Let's go Control S and save. Let's save that.
If that's the size after 10,000,
no. It's gone to 5.9.
That's still really small.
It's gone from 1.1 meg to call it 6 meg. It's not, look, you know, that is 6 times, but you know, I've done 10,000 simulations.
Yeah.
So yeah, so Rakesh, no, it doesn't slow down the model at all. Dynamic arrays is extremely fast. The model's just as fast as it was before. You know, there's no slowing down. It's not recalculating every time. Obviously, it's just set, and it's waiting there for me. So does it mean VBA is becoming a dinosaur? Sanjay, please go on to LinkedIn and have a look at the discussion on VBA, which Chris Arjun threw out. Yes, I honestly think that VBA is decreasing. I don't think it's dying, but I definitely think it's decreasing with the likes of dynamic arrays and Power Query for sure. Let's go and grab my Power BI now, right? So let's go in. So that's 500, and all I'm going to click here is refresh. So clicking refresh, refreshing the Power BI model, 1, 2, 3, no, it doesn't take long. There you go, 10,000, 10K, right? And there's the new distribution curve.
That's amazing.
So I think it's extremely powerful. We want to give some time for people to have some questions, but are there any?
So Lance, I'm just thinking, I suppose one thing for accountants or anything like that, you have to think a little bit about backwards compatibility with things like this, don't you? So it might be okay if you're on Office 365, but if your clients aren't, I'm assuming this would just fall over.
Yeah, Angela, that absolutely. I think Angela raised that as well. Clients are on older static versions of Excel. Look,
sorry, Angela, I didn't steal you.
Yeah, don't write. I mean, it's good to learn it. It's, you know, we're always playing with cutting edge tech, but we're not using dynamic arrays for clients yet. But we you know, when it becomes standard across the industry, we'll be ready. Rather than having to wait and learn it and catch up, we'll be ahead. So that's why we're always playing with more advanced tools to do that. And I love the way that dynamic arrays fits into Power BI using Power Query. I just go in here, you know, it's literally the Power Query editor. It's picking up the Excel file and away we go. And there's not a lot of transformation that's needed in terms of the applied steps on the editor. Sure. So I think that's it for now on the dynamic arrays. Of course, we will go into this a bit more. And I think also we're going to actually be giving this away as part of the training workshop that we're going to talk at the end, Giles. So those that want to really play with some of this, it's certainly available.
Yeah, so do you want me to jump back to the slides?
So Julia's got a question. Will this work where individual P&Ls are produced for different business units within a company? Absolutely. So what we had there was one revenue category for one business unit. We could easily add a different business unit with its revenue products. So there's no question. It's just pretty much how you would set it up. It's a formula. It's in Excel. It's dynamic. You know, it becomes extremely powerful.
I mean, that's pretty much the first time I've seen that run start to finish. That's incredible, to be honest. So Mike asked a question earlier. Somebody on the chat asked, "Are the models available?" Yes. So that's what we're coming on to. Obviously, we've done quite a few free sessions now. Lance and I have put together 2 intense training packages that are coming up across the next few weekends. as part of that, the models from both sides will be available. So we wanted to talk you through what we're going to cover in there. And there's a lot of content that we're going to talk about for those sessions, but actually one of the things we are really keen to do, the numbers are limited for these courses, is we want to try and build a small community of people that are really passionate about modeling. When I showed the bookcase slide earlier on, this idea is that over your modeling career, you're learning things through experience, whether that's mistakes or just doing things in an inefficient way. And our idea with these courses is, yes, you get content and yes, you get models, but actually you're also going to join a community that involves the two of us as well. And in an ideal world, you could then be sharing your experiences with each other, maybe sharing solutions, sharing things that you learn as you go through your career with Excel. So Lance, do you want to talk through the kind of overview of the two tracks initially that we've got?
Yeah, sure, Giles. I've just posted, someone asked the question, a link to those training, I've just posted on the chat. So you feel free to, it should also be in your emails. Perhaps some of those emails get caught in spam filters and all the rest. So Giles, I think the key thing why is this different to any other training course that's currently going on? There's lots of training around. The key thing here is that both Giles and I are professional modelers running a business of financial modeling. And whilst we certainly use and apply a lot of the standards, we're also business owners and we're solving lots of different problems and also using different apps. And so I think the key thing here is about not just building models, but actually building them with scale and speed and efficiency. And that's where we want to add the value back to people that are joining the course, because we know how long it takes to build a model from scratch. We know how long it takes to run a Monte Carlo simulation, just basic things like that. So we're going to cover the basics on that. Sorry, Giles, you want to just pop back a sec, just to quickly cover some of the outline of. So track one is really covering some of the basics, and track two. So track one, mindset, Excel and apps, best practice, shortcuts, navigation, formulas. We're going to give you both Giles and I train people for financial modeling. I'm a financial model FMI trainer, approved trainer. So people will get some of my FMI training for the exam, which I'll be sharing. Dashboard, sensitivity, scenarios, we'll do all of that. We'll give time for open questions. There's going to be 8 hours of in track one and 8 hours in track two, broken up into two days. So 4 hours in the one day, 4 hours on the next day. Of course, with breaks in between, we're not going to make you sit in front of a computer for 4 hours. But we're going to go through this and we're going to give you homework, because what we feel is that there's no point in sitting here and doing workshops and following us. You've really got to do it and then give it back to us. And so we're going to review that. We're going to have follow-up sessions, and we're going to also have a discussion group within Slack where we can share each other's problems. And so the key thing there is joining a community of like-minded modelers, sharing your problems, sharing your challenges. And of course, we'll do follow-up sessions after the 16 hours to run through some of the solutions to the homework, but we'll give people time to do that. So track one is definitely beginner, intermediate. Track two, we're going to go deeper. We're going to go deeper into, obviously we're going to recap the basics. So for those that don't make track one, track two, you're still going to cover off some of that, but we're not going to sort of go through all of them. But we're going to focus on the technology and the tools, and really look at things that can speed up building, speed up visualization of modeling. And so we're going to look at our Excel toolkit. So both Giles and I use add-ins. Giles, I've got so many add-ins in my Excel at the moment. It's not funny because I'm doing the Financial Modeling Innovation Awards. So I've installed like all these different add-ins, including Oak and a whole bunch of others. So it's pretty exciting to see all the tech in financial modeling these days, let alone dynamic arrays, which obviously is an add-in. It comes within Excel. Again, open question session and some homework. So the track one and track two both span over 2 days on a weekend. So, we figured that people are busy. They've got all their other things going on. It's going to be in the evening in Australia, in the morning in UK. The times are later on. We'll go through that. 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday, and then we come back the next week and do the same. Want to just go to the next slide, Giles?
Yeah, and I think it's just worth saying as well, Lance, that the sessions will all be recorded. So I appreciate 4-hour blocks both days on a weekend is a commitment. So if for whatever reason you had to duck out for an hour, you won't lose that content. It'll be
it's going to be recorded. Everything's going to be recorded, and you will have access to those recordings. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think the value of what we're giving away as part of, and literally we are giving it away because there's the price for the training. We've got models that we're going to be sharing £2,500 worth of intellectual property. Which we that dynamic array model, internally we built that. Plus I spent days building the PowerBI on that. So, that in itself is worth quite a bit. And then of course, all the other tools. We've also able to negotiate with some of the tools that we use with the owners of those tools for subscription value and tech value. Data Deer is going to give us extra days, Excel Analyzer, and Medano. All of that is going to add up to about £385 worth of value. And there's also the bundle. So if you do both, there's a discount. Yeah, Office 365 to run dynamic arrays yet, Matt, but you don't need to have Office 365 for the course. We're just going to share the models with you. Everything we're going to do, you can just have, even Excel 2010 is good enough. So as long as, you don't necessarily have to have the latest for the training course, but of course, to run the dynamic array model, you need to have the latest Office 365, ideally on the monthly track, the monthly update. If you're on an annual or semi-annual update, then you may not have the latest version. And then, of course, they've got 16 hours with us, Giles.
Well, yes, which we've prudently valued at almost priceless. The other thing I think it's worth saying is, especially for track one, our idea is that we can really take people on a journey. So even if you're relatively new to Excel, I think if you've literally hardly used it at all, it might be a bit much. But as long as you're comfortable with the idea of what functions and formulas are, we're going to guide you through that track one, all of the basics. And this is from my trading background, looking at functions, pivot tables, Excel tables, the scenario modeling, leading you up through into more of Lance's world then, where we're looking at the real cutting edge of what's available. And we'll both be touching on add-ins as well. But yeah, in principle, you get 16 hours of both of us. We'll both be on those training sessions for the whole time. And we'll probably be involved in the Slack conversation afterwards.
So yeah, I guess this is just a quick run through 5 models from us that one-way cash flow model, which some of you may already have or may have already downloaded, which is free. We're going to go through a best practice exercise, income statements, and three-way model built from a 0, and then of course the dynamic array, which you saw, and the Power BI file as well. So there's a huge amount of value in that, and Giles is obviously going to go through his workbooks. Some of them are training exercises, so you can get familiar with some of the basic Excel formulas and conditional formatting and lookups and date exercises. Giles, was there anything else in particular, that tables?
Well, I mean, just to say that, the homework part is quite intense. So I think both of us are giving pretty detailed or pretty comprehensive financial modeling exercises as part of the 2 tracks. So it's 16 hours, but also there's a fair bit of work for you guys as well, which is great. I mean, that's what I always find I learn best from, is actually, it's great listening to people talk about Excel, but you have to get kind of stuck in and do the work yourselves as well.
Sure. So Julia's got a question there. Julia, we'll be giving all of these models to those that register. The 3-way model is certainly available from Eloquence, but you have to purchase it. The one-way model is free. There is a discount code, COVID100, for that one. That's going to be running out soon. But all of these models, if you've registered, you're obviously going to get those sent to you as part of the training course. So not only do you get all the time, but you're obviously going to get the models as well. So the 3-way model is not available at the moment, I guess, for free, but the one-way model we did give away So yeah, if you just go onto Eloquens, you should be able to find it. So yeah, 8 hours, as we said, 2 days, Australia, 5 p.m., UK, 9 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday, same time, same place, online. And there's limited spaces. So, you know, obviously we want to give people the opportunity to sort of work together, but we don't want to overload it. And then of course we're going to have post the training, there's going to be support, we're going to review the homework, and there's going to be some collaboration on Slack as well. So we've actually got a Slack instance set up called Model Clarity. So it's a combination of Model Citizen and Clarity consultancy services. So we've combined those two. And of course, there's a bundle of the 2 tracks for £450. You know, each track individually is 300. You buy the first one, there's a discount code for the second, and you get 50% off the second, which gives you your 450 in total. So sorry, so Barry, the cost there, yeah, is 450 for the bundle, and 300 for the individual tracks.
Yeah, 300 for individuals. So you could just do one on its own. Obviously, the value is for the 2 together, the 450. Yeah. So we're going to share the link, aren't we, Lance? I'll stay on that for the moment. We'll share the link again at the end of this session. What are we going to do? Email it back out to everybody, the Eventbrite link?
Yeah, well, I'm going to put it on the chat again for that. That's the Eventbrite link. That link in there is actually, it does have the link to the Eventbrite in that link. So that links to our landing page. But of course, that's certainly available there. So, Giles, what's the quick time check? How are we going?
Less than 50 minutes. So I think just to cap that off, and we'll go on to Q&A. It'd be great to have as many of you on there as possible. Part of where this came from was, you know, Lance and I had never spoken to each other a month ago, and we've spent a lot of time now, you know, talking about Excel almost every day, and that's great. And it showed us the value when you meet somebody else with that mindset. You know, I wish I had a group of people 10 years ago that were as kind of keen and interested in modeling as I was. So I hope actually the most value from this isn't the models or the training, that it's actually the fact you get this community that you can stay in touch with and learn and share experiences from for years into the future. I hope that's what it is. Lance, was there anything else you wanted to talk about the offer before we go into Q&A?
One last thing, yeah, these are the only 2 dates at the moment. Obviously, we're running this as a bit of a trial. You know, if there's more interest, we certainly can look at other dates. But I guess if anyone wants for us to do some in-house training or anything separate, you know, at your convenience, of course, you know, just reach out to Giles and myself, and we can organize that. But of course, the price will probably be slightly different compared to the group price, but of course we can certainly do that. So do you want to just start the Q&A, Giles? I'm going to just grab the one-way model link for someone who's asking.
Yeah, so hopefully we've been doing a relatively good job of picking up the questions, but we just wanted to leave a little bit more time for Q&A now. So Roger, when you buy track 1 on Eventbrite, you'll be given a 50% discount code for track 2. So that means that the overall price will come to the 450, but you only get that code once you've gone through the process of purchasing track 1. Any other questions on there that we've missed?
So I've just shared the link to the one-way cash flow, which is available on Eloquens, and that's free. And I think you've also got a model on Eloquens as well, Giles, that's free. Make sure you use the discount code COVID100. I'll type it on here. COVID100 is the discount code to get the model for free. Obviously, it's normally priced at $299 US. Sorry, $399 US.
There's a question a while back, so there's a couple we may have skipped past. Why does this not work well in a 3-way model? I think was that referring to...
Yeah, so I think that was Rob's question. That was a good question. I think, look, the dynamic array formulas are quite limiting at the moment. So there isn't if you have a what's commonly referred to as a corkscrew method, which is your opening balance sheet movement closing, and then your closing, just exactly what Giles was showing earlier. That's called a corkscrew. Corkscrews don't really work that well in dynamic arrays. So you then got to have a really ugly Mamalt formula to actually add all the movements to the opening to get the closing. And it's really complex and convoluted. So yes, it works, but it's not pretty. And so I think there's already recommendations back to Microsoft to make that easier to use. So definitely if something that people can improve on, and if Microsoft want people to use dynamic arrays, they're going to have to make some of these improvements into the formula language. And I think that's already been noted by them. So we'll see how long it takes them to release that. Of course, they've got many other things in their pipeline.
And how long did it take you to kind of get to grips with dynamic arrays, Lance?
Well, I mean, to be frank, I watched Jeff Robson, who's in Perth, sort of talk about it. I watched some of his videos. I then looked and read up on it. It took a week or so just to get my head around some of the formulas and then apply it. But the building blocks of the model are the same. The Power BI took me a day to 2 days to do once we had that. But I mean, in all honesty, I did have a staff member, Leon, helping me as well. So I sort of directed him to do a lot of the grunt work. But in a week and a half of sort of focused efforts, I could really see the benefits of it and get familiar with it. So yeah, it's a small investment, but in the end, the key thing is not to rush in too deep, because in the end, not every client's going to use it. It depends on their version of Excel. It's cutting edge, but ultimately it's going to take a while for it to be across the board. If you think of, if you just, there are people on this call which will probably be still on, Excel 2010 or 2013. I think there's still lots of people on Excel 2013. So, that's quite crazy, right? Where it's 7 years behind the current version of Office 365. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. But I think as technology moves and it's moving faster, that, it's good to sort of at least be on top of it.
Great. Okay. I can't see any more questions. There are a couple of quite good comments earlier on about the use of VBA, and so Matt said something about he had to leave something overnight. I think it's quite an amusing comment. Yeah, find us on LinkedIn as well. We always say this, it's great to connect with other people that are interested in modeling. So do find us. Anything else from your side, Lance?
No, just Julia, you've now got the link. You should have the link there, Julia, below on the one-way model. I'm just going back.
Angela just said she had to do a bid in 97 to 2003. So Angela, I guess I used to work in bids. I'm guessing you were quite familiar with the kind of Monte Carlo side of things, looking at contingency, and maybe you've used tools like at-risk before.
So PM, the second code, just email us. We get notification of when it's paid, and we'll send out the discount code. And if not, just send us an email. Info at, I'll just type it in, modelcitizen.com. Yeah, unfortunately, we wanted to make it as flexible as possible for people to do either track 1 or track 2 or both. And we limit it to size. So it's a bit clunky, we know, in terms of the way we've set it up. But at the same time, we wanted people to, if they wanted to do both, that's really useful.
There's a question going. So Simon said, can the models be adapted for, service construction, but any other companies? I think, and Matt's just replied, Lance, maybe we could discuss this as well now, but yes-ish. I think there's always going to be an element of tailoring. I think through what you do with Medano, there's certainly ways to make, the tweaking of models a lot faster.
Absolutely. I think the key thing of these models, and look, no model is ever the same. So, and you're right, Charles, no matter what you do, you're going to have to change it. The models certainly can give you a starting point and a structure, but then and you can build on top of that. And if you're using something like Medano, then that change process is lightning fast, as opposed to if you're doing a static template. Medano has this concept of a dynamic template, similar to dynamic arrays. So dynamic template means if I add in a row or add in something, it populates throughout the model. So it's extremely powerful. And of course, there's content within the Medano library, including soon to be released project finance and a range of others. I guess, Barry, you had a couple of questions. Barry, please feel free to send the questions to the group because you're sending to me privately. For practitioners, where's the market entry point to offer these services? So offering financial modeling services is a great question because I think really it's going to depend on the different clients. If you think of startups and you need to raise capital, need a model to pitch to. So I think quite often, modeling can be used for even companies that don't even exist yet. We've done for family and friends model builds where we've made it conditional on them getting money, and so we get paid based on them raising the capital. We can do that because we have other jobs going, and I can sort of wear that cost. But in the end, we do models for startups, we do models for SMEs, we do models for medium-sized companies, large corporates, big four banks, government as well, and treasury. And we also do bid for public infrastructure. So we sort of work across the full gamut. I think, Giles, you work mainly in the SME sector, but we sort of work across the full range. So in the end, it depends on what your client's willing to pay and how much value that model is. A model that's going to help someone raise $100 million in capital is worth something. So you charge for it. A model that's going to help someone, get themselves out of a sticky situation and they don't have the money to pay you, well, obviously you're going to have to negotiate on the price, and you might have to see it as a long-term relationship. So I think, pricing a model, and we can talk about that as well as part of the mindset section, perhaps, Giles, where we sort of talk about how do you price modeling and how do you work on modeling.
Yeah, and I suppose, so we work predominantly with SMEs, but we're doing a lot of work with accounting firms now. And I think most of the accountants we deal with, they're great clients because they just get it. If they are wasting what feels like wasting hours and hours and hours of time every day, every month, running these really inefficient processes, the models we deliver to them using data just save them so much time. So I've never tried to quantify it, but if whatever, we will spend a week on a model developing something that saves somebody 10 hours a month of time. It's you get the investment back quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly when you start using some of the add-ins. So Helen, again, please feel free to ask the question to everyone else as opposed to just privately. Can the models be adapted to local government accounts? Absolutely. It's all in Excel. I mean, that's why both Giles and I love Excel, because ultimately a lot of the flexibility still exists, whereas a lot of the other systems, it's quite difficult and complex, and you've got to learn a new formula language or coding language. And so, it is custom. You can customize it. Would your cash flow model work in Google Sheets? Yeah, absolutely, it would. So the one-way cash flow model will work in Google Sheets. However, certain things like now in that one-way cash flow model, there is Monte Carlo simulation, and it does run on VBA. So it doesn't have dynamic arrays. So that won't run on Google Sheets. That VBA will not run on Google Sheets. The hyperlinks, I don't think run on Google Sheets. I might have to be checked on that one. I know at one stage it didn't. They may have updated that. So there's certain formats and formulas that don't work on Google Sheets. Rakesh, customized to the point where you can pull zero data and use that in a model? Absolutely. I think Giles's ones are going to be absolutely connected to through data deer. And of course, we're going to show you how to build some Medano models connected, as I did last time, show how to connect it through live to Zero, and we're going to run through that as a process. Again, you don't need to buy these tools. We're just going to show you how they work. We're not saying go out and get it for the training. You know, that's really up to people to decide what they want to do. We're going to show you how these tools are applied. We're going to give you the models that relate to those applications. But of course, some of them won't work until you buy the tool. So you won't be able to refresh an Excel workbook that links to DataDeer, that uses DataDeer to link to Zero, until you buy the DataDeer add-in. So I think that's
what you will get is a 90-day trial. So they've extended for anyone on this course, they've given you 90 days, which hopefully gives you, lots of time to test it out yourselves.
Yeah, so DataDeer is 90 days. There's 90 days for Modeler as well. I think 75 for Excel Analyzer. Medano are not giving an extension of time, but they do give a 10% discount on the price. Yeah, I guess it just depends.
I think we've hit time, Lance. We're 1 minute past. It hasn't kicked us off, so I assume we're okay to carry on for a minute.
Yeah, no, we can carry on for a short bit. I'm going to be late for my other session with Kenny shortly, but yeah, MyOb Exo, yes, depends on the tool. So I think DataDeer just really works with QBO and Zero. Medano works with any system, any accounting system, because everything dumps out into Excel or CSV. So MyOb Exo, absolutely, you can do that. In fact, a lot of the accounting systems have add-ins within themselves and queries that dump data out of the accounting package into tables, and then you just go pick it up. So Medano has a mapping tool so you're not copying and pasting. There's no VBA. It's actually a mapping tool to any Excel or CSV dump. So we've done it to Hyperion and SAP. That's what I did actually when I worked at NAB. I was using Medano linking into Hyperion. So yeah, well, thanks everyone. Hopefully that was useful. The recording will be available, and hopefully we'll see you in the training workshops. And if there's anything we can help, just reach out.
And thanks for being so engaging, guys. It's been, I think, from start to finish on the summit and all of our sessions, we get so much interaction. So it's yeah, it's really enjoyable. Thanks very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everyone. Have a good evening, or have a good day.
I've just started my day. Yeah.